I'm going to use this particular video. I'm going to have playing while I'm doing this experiment. It's called The Phenomenon of Cube-Shaped UFOs Inside Spheres. It doesn't just written in the video, so example of it not influencing what I'm drawing. So let's see. Cards. I'll show them to you. Let's have some. Yes. have a video that was it's actually verse 2. Helping me figure out different concepts of how to represent them, illustrate them in this way. But also as a experiment and research of my own abilities, my You know, I can recognize, especially like if there's any sort of external subliminal or whatnot mind control. We don't want any of that. So, it's always good to, I guess I would grasp on knowing your own sort of initial instincts. What is not external influence or put upon, that kind of thing. So just, yeah, I think I'm gonna. What if we live in a super deterministic universe? I talked about ways of exploring that in these sorts of playlists, and I pulled from previously made playlist archives, and for various reasons, and in a sort of loosely organized way of doing so, of collecting and archiving. It's a period of time, 2017 to just, things that happened during that time period. Music, campaign, it's a little time capsule as well. But, not just within that element too, but it's crazy how it, but yeah, and so that there's so many possibilities and combinations when pulling from an archive playlist like Entitled, which is a play on the word en route, which is en title, because I picked every video for that archival sort of collection playlist to pull from, kind of like you would in styling, pull some looks from base. And some of the videos I continuously always use, I always put into those as like a base foundation to pull from. So, because I had so many connections and layers of meaning. So, and but out of a certain set amount of 5,000 videos, but there's so many combinations, but it's only pull from that one playlist. Or I could pull from another playlist. I mean, I could combine them, but basically, I mean, those are all my own collections of videos, and some of those videos, incorporated some of these ideas and concepts, so it kind of builds upon itself, kind of a little bit of a feedback loop, but it's more than that because it's continuously evolving. I don't know. And so all those deeper concepts kind of explored in these more just like anyone could make a playlist or go to the supermarket and buy a Brillo box. That's what you make out of it. And I think that it was a great means to explore some of these deeper concepts of predestination and just complexity and entanglement, tons of ways of thinking about theology as well, and additions, and word of mouth, and how things get edited and distilled over time and passed down or whatnot through stories and mythologies, but telephone and how in print editions, there's something you said about reiterations and everything, not always reinventing the wheel, but just tons of concepts to consider, ways of the more simple means that kind of offset or balance out the like very deepness of the weight or heaviness of like some concept like predeterminism or predestination, and how does God play into that, or is there, all these things that we wonder about, but through more, would have to be more easily recognizable in like visual codes and like things like that you can kind of pick out easily, that might seem like, oh well, it's so simple, or superficial seeming, where it's like fashion can't be, but it's like all these visual identifiers that pull together these concepts and ideas and connect between one another to create new bridges or links. And I've explored all these like ideas of external factors following a thread or connective thread, and per context, and how it's designed that way to create its own connections within ones that are videos that are picked to create connection, but at the same time kind of explores these ideas of throughout the whole thing. I mean, I have videos on this in the past, just ideas of following the essence or the meaning, the context of it, so that you don't miss the point. Going off on like it might be a connection. Is it the main connection? Is it beneficial connection? Does it lead you to some, or is it out of your own sort of, preconceived notions, you find a connection, or are you considering all possibilities of why that one particular video, despite its title, because that was really only one experiment, is kind of a precursor to ChatGPT to see if I picked videos simply for their titles and like basic words that you could string together to form sentences of reading a timeline vertically, like they went, and then like I had time units, so all just to see if AI could bring together sentences through pulling out of very comprehensive playlist working titles to pull from, like that's the intention. See what it could say. But then everything else after that just became archival playlists at ET 1, 2, 3, 4, as I added to them. And to pull from. So to explore these different contexts from these. But it's kind of that runic idea of like what can help you can also hinder you. I think it's AWAS. I think it's a birch tree branch that could be used as one, could also snap back on you, and like hypothetically all these, so the ideas of creating this beautiful web codex symbolism, entanglement of these ideas that form their own connections and builds upon itself in a sense. Visualizations of complexity and entanglement, how one might affect the other, but is that of your own doing or making, or own sort of neurological processes, or is it out of objective connections and overlaps with like a word that then conjuncts with another? Each one is different, but you can be like, oh, I can't believe she is trying to imply that. And it's like, was I, or did you completely ignore the context and relevance and reason for making a timeline or a concept, overall visual presentation of connections and ideas that form from those connections, like weaving together more conceptual ideas through some visual codes that you find in campaigns. Visual codes, like visuals, from the alchemical cycle. Some are universal, but some are built upon that, or personalized, or actually like just developed out of sayings that I've often said, or just all kinds of things, themes, and natural, organically. So that became a thing, a word, or their own, especially interested brands designers really got that with their own, like, sort of, this is how I want to incorporate that idea of first phase, or like into the campaign or whatnot. And it was easy to pull those together because it was visual and aesthetic, and you could just, at least the details can help, can also like leave out the details, it's just that sort of connections, the web entanglement could help or hinder. Some people get very confused and see these overlaps as one sort of streamlined or across the board kind of thing versus weighing on a scale or in a certain topic or context. In any case, yeah. Just a lot of fun ways, and if that's not something people are interested in, it's what I'm interested in, is my art practice, but I thought people could also appreciate it on other levels as well, just for the music or whatnot. But the point being the order that you put it in. Why make a gesture or like an abstract mark on a canvas in the old place? I mean, it's a composition, and anyone chooses those things differently. And same with order of place. It's just digital, it's conceptual, it's to spark thinking and different possibilities or perspectives of consideration regarding a single topic or a pre-existing idea or an allegory or a combination therein of principles, theories, genres, or even like art theory, triangular composition. You see Renaissance paintings, and the way people are situated, and more of a triangular sort of formation. Often it's like Mary and Jesus and John the Baptist. So I just had a triangular computation play on that concept of composition, translated more into the digital realm. So strangeness and RGB and color theory and ways of combining these different, sometimes thought of disparate but or unrelated, but are not relevant to one another in any practical way. But I think it's fun to see if I can find through connections unexpected ways to reveal new meaning or significance or a starting point, and carry that through in research and how things come back up is to experiments. Oh, that relates or pertains to something I did like months or a year ago or 5 years ago, or a theme and not overall concept that presents itself or itself is art, in the sense of a cycle, an alchemical cycle, that these themes and codes and visuals continually evolve and build upon themselves, but the cycle, and about identifying those cycles more or less that we live in society, commercial industry, trends, easy identifiers, where the market is in time, and where people might be going. If you can, I haven't seen a lot of I don't know, things having to do with, is the easiest example, cults. 2017, even like in movies, as a forecaster that I actually trained and studied in school, you kind of have to look at everything and consider everything, because it's about where people's focus will be in upcoming months. And so what influences that is everything from movie, cinema, to politics, to all kinds of world affairs that have an impact on economy and how much people can spend, and where people are willing to spend their disposable income, and what would be people are going to want, and you can see that in all these, what you can identify where they are, like 2017 cults, there was a lot of words and whatnot, thoughts about cult mentality within politics, but then you see it in cinema and like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when they're movie within a movie, kind of like Midsummer Night Dream, but about Charles Manson and those murders and the cults that they were in, and television, American Horror Story, cults, and talks about on a landscape environmental level, small groups and forming small islands or mounds, and you see a lot of runway, like purple sand mounds as the models walk around them, and clothes as the runway side. And it would also have to do with other things of that phase, and so all systems go, and lots of digital cubism and trial and error, like initial systems and early technology, and I think of Light Bright and like 80s arcade things. And I've talked about this before, and that's a phase we revisit a lot, because people tend to flux between wanting independence and group thinking or group mentalities, or coming together to keep alive tradition and heritage. But then you go through that and you're like, but now, and that's why oftentimes it was thought of as a pendulum. Now we want our independence back, but really it's more of like a gradual type of evolution and scale, and you can identify those things and place them within context and phases, and weighing which one is more relevant to the here and now. So you kind of see a little bit of everything all the time, of course, because people are in different, like the majority or what's most relevant now, or what's most, and kind of gauge that by current affairs and what's going on in the moment, knowing where people's mindsets might be, and how these phases might be styled as you go forward, depending on current and past, and references to past, history if you don't want to repeat it, or if you want to repeat it in a better way, where those style trends started from and what they were referencing, Biba era referencing, just, yeah, lots of things. This kind of in art movements, and what influenced surrealism or spiritual movements, and people's interest in the occult, and that's one phase you will discover, and having to do with spiritualism, probably some overlap with Scorpio, the eighth house, and things that are hidden in nature, and bringing that into art in the late 1800s and early 1900 teens to like the 30s and 40s. It was big, and you see that in like a Netflix television show Archive 81, which there was a lot to do with spiritualism and art, and so then say that kind of relates to people probably having to do with questioning their own reality or afterlife, and maybe that's stemming from, depending on the time period, perhaps maybe some sort of famine or disease or something that is bringing to people's attention more so life or death situations where they have to question their own sort of, and so they get involved in spiritualism and all these kinds of ways of, and you can see how it kind of evolves and changes throughout history depending on, but there's some very fundamental base, like identifiers that we're not that inventive. So, and a lot of people sort of just kind of go with the flow or crowd, and so it's pretty easy to see within also markets and industries where people's mindsets are at, just having a little bit of an idea of, not necessarily even having to be an expert, but a little bit of an idea of history of economy and things of that nature too, because it all has to do with how much money you can put into hiring people. In the 90s, there was an influx of hires in the fashion industry because of the economy, and then as a result, I'd be in meetings in 2010 with people that were like Generation X, and some knew their stuff, some absolutely didn't. I even asked my boss, like, why didn't you know what a plush fabric was? And we showed them our mood board, and she's like, a lot of people were like just hired, like, just basically for kicks, back in like the 90s. And so some people just still don't really know their stuff. And since the technology evolves and changes so much, you kind of have to keep up with that. Like I started at the Levy Group as an associate designer doing a lot of the technical drawings, and I just been through FIT and was up to date. Like now I'd probably have to go back and like familiarize myself with all of that. But I went into the Levy Group as my position, and their drawings or their tech packs and whatnot were just not, because they never learned that in school. In like they had kind of taught themselves, the people who are a little bit older than me, that so there's just like I don't know where I'm going with this, but to just have a good sense of, it's also intuition. I mean, you can be trained as much as you want, but if you're not perceptive, not picking up on and have a good like reference knowledge base and like rotary like reference, in your mind of just not rotary, you know, reference. I can't think of the word right now. Just like basically, you have a lot of visual reference, just good at that kind of thing. Index, visual reference index. I don't know. Yeah, because if you're not that aware of things, I don't know. Putting into practice in a way that's measurable and trackable, intuition. And that's what, I mean, it's a small niche industry, really is, even within fashion. Like there's only a few companies that are pretty much worldwide. WGSN, and it really gets into statistics, percentages, all these kinds of data, graphs, tracking, commercial trends and whatnot, because that at the end of the day, the fashion industry is a multi-million-dollar industry, and it's about on all levels, from what you think of more like fashion and to my teachers at Baylor taught in like had worked in like warehouses for like Fruit of the Loom, and basically were expertise on like making repeat patterns of like ugly print that goes on underwear that's sold in Walmart in like some sort of production facility in Dallas. And that's what they're training to do. A world of a difference from Baylor to FIT, where I had like my illustration teacher was adjunct professor that had worked for Donegal at different forecasting companies. They often have like illustrations and technical flats and all kinds of things to illustrate, demonstrate the ideas of what's to come, forecasts, and those books cost like $2,000 per season, or you can have a membership, online digital access. But yeah, and she was also like illustrating 100 years of Gap for some big special project. And my structured draping teacher, who knows, like was just expert, had started a school with, or worked towards starting a school with Karl Lagerfeld in Italy in like I think the 70s or 80s. He could make a jacket in like 20 minutes flat, and it was perfect. My soft draping teacher had taught Francisco Costa, who took over Calvin Klein, and he pulled me aside, and one day he's like, your desk is where Francisco Costa sat when I taught him 20 years ago at FIT. That's where he went, so did Calvin Klein. And it was always one of my goals for Calvin Klein. And he's like, it was just so cute because he's like a little bit older, and you know how sometimes they're like hearing and they think they're whispering, but really they're just talking at like normal speech level, like he was an older man, so cute. And so someone 3 feet away from me was like, he's gonna tell you the same thing I told him, that you have a gift, and that should just like take you really far. And I met with him so many times. We talked about astrology. He gave me like his favorite astrologers. He was such a sweet old man. And then I saw Francisco Costa at this moment PS1 party, my friend Juan took me to. He was a member, but he also worked at MoMA's and Stellar, and he's an artist, so he's very. He would make these really cool murals with like band out metric cards and all these found objects and like big colorful things on the walls and collage type things. Yeah, and so he was always invited to those parties. MoMA PS1 is like their extension, the MoMA Museum out in Queens. There were a lot of. It's actually an old school, PS, public school, and it was converted into lots of studios, and there's a big party and then a big structure out there and built, and I don't know what it was exactly, and just it was just fun. And so you go around looking at different artist exhibits and drinks and things like that. And Juan and I were walking down the hall, and I passed her supposed, and he looked at me, and I was like, oh my gosh. Juan's like, who? Because you have to kind of be in fashion, I don't know. But yeah, I just felt like it was kind of like destiny, predestined. Yeah. My structured drape or advanced draping class, that teacher actually, she had worked as a couture seamstress and draper, but in couture and atelier, and that's how complicated my story night dress was. She was like, I'm not really sure how the, but she saw the whole process, and she was like, yeah. She actually met Andy Warhol in the 70s. She told me about that. She met him out somewhere, and they were wearing their own designs, and he asked if they would make him shirts. I actually rented a room from someone who knew Andy Warhol in the 80s, when he started Interview magazine. And her husband, actually, he was from Jamaica, and he worked in like sound engineering. He was a sound engineer on Snoop Dogg, like one of his tours. And he made these guitar pedals and his clients were the Beastie Boys and the IAS, these wooden guitar pedals. And he told me stories how he played soccer with Bob Marley growing up in Jamaica. They were really cool. And she told me all these stories about how Andy took her out with his friends, and how he was really sweet to her. How he gave her limo one night to take home because she was just sad about something. They're out. He held her hand under the table. She was going through something really difficult. And I was like, do you think he liked me? I wish I could have met him. And she's like, of course, you're from the Midwest. The thing is, that was really funny is on my first trip to New York, 8th grade trip, was like with a friend of the family who was from out there, so that we could do it on the cheap and stay with her family. And she took me around New York, and I had never been there before. She took me to the UN, and I remember walking out and just looking up at this old factory, this brick building, and a faded sign. It was an old hat factory, and thinking, this looks so familiar. It caught my attention. Familiar is the right word, but kind of like how when you are listening to something and certain words stand out as if they were highlighted. And so, or like reading like that, just really, I don't know exactly that, but I just felt maybe I'd been there before or something. This is prior to even really knowing about Andy Warhol's factory or Andy Warhol or ED, any of those, that time period really. I mean, it was 8th grade, freshman, going into high school. So we visited the World Trade Center that summer right before 9/11. Well, it was a few months. More than a few months, but yeah. We visited a lot a lot of places, but yeah. These timings worked out in that way that I don't know. At least probably because it's a Sagittarius and ninth house ruled Jupiter. Usually I have to do something I'm studying when I'm especially studying something or researching something. And it's like reflected. I take pictures of it. It's reflected in the clouds like 30 minutes later. Something I just drew and confirmation of like a time machine and all of this kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, after sophomore year of college, I had just taken fashion history of costume or fashion history, which really goes back to like caveman times. And just again, it was one of my favorite classes. It talks about everything that was happening in history and how it influenced, fashions at the time and just every different, like a cravat and every like little tidbit about, what was worn under the skirts, make them really wide and like Marie Antoinette's time, just like every little thing. And then I studied abroad that summer and we went to Paris and Italy and we got to go to Versailles for a day. So, and that same summer, Marie Antoinette came out in theaters. So it was like 2006. And I was like, this is just so perfect. I was so excited because I was geeking out over costume history. But that was the trip that we almost got reported missing to the U.S. Embassy. It was one of the best nights of my life. It was so much fun. I was 20, and we could drink there. And it was last night in Paris, and we were about to fly to Italy the next day. And so we wanted to go out, and it was a bank holiday, so there were a lot of people out. And we went to go see the Eiffel Tower lit up at night, and had a few drinks, and the subway closed, and we took separate cabs back. And my friend and I were like, why would we go home? It was our last night in Paris. Let's go to there was a bar down the street. It was an Irish pub, actually. But there was a lot of people out, and it was just really fun for us because they're like, ooh, Americans. And I had like one guy lighting my cigarette over here and one guy buying me a drink over here. And we were like, this is great. And then we met these two guys, and they took us this like some sort of underground club where you could like buy a bottle and keep it there, I guess, and could always return as long as the still drinking out of the bottle, I guess. I don't know. Something like that. It was like a underground rave or something like that. I don't remember. I started to like realize that we had our passports on us and we didn't tell anyone else where we were going. And I was like, maybe we should. But we ended up staying. My guy didn't speak any much English. It was, it was a fun night. And they walked us back to our hotel. And I mean, it just, again, one of these situations where I'm the kind of the exception. Like, it wasn't like it looked bad. It wasn't that, it's like, of course, you're going to go do those things. And someone had spilled drinks on me, so I probably didn't look like I was, and we didn't realize that our roommates, because we didn't really know them, would be like concerned that we didn't end up back at the hotel after we split up. And the teachers were there, and my friend was just very like like she was so obvious. She was just quiet and like shifty eyes and like we're in trouble. And I was like, and we did to some degree. We weren't really sure where to go because we were, I don't know. It's like we got lost and we thought it better to stay in one place until the subway opened or whatnot, until we could find a cab or people to give us directions. And these nice guys brought us back and they're just like, we're so glad you're okay. And we're like, we were about to, they had called the police to report us to the U.S. Embassy because they had to get on a plane to go to Italy. And so they didn't want to like leave us in Paris. But yeah, we're going to have, it was a great night. It was fun. I had so much fun. That's the last time I was there. And I wish I could have so many years ago. bit more obviously cheap. Because the concierge came out and scolded us and was like, your teacher's been up worrying about you. And I was like, and we had to, like, travel with them for the next, like, few weeks. And I was like, I don't want this to be awful. So, yeah. But it was fun. It was great. Good memory. 3 places. I wish I could go back. 3 places that took actual photos. It's so beautiful to see in person. One being the cathedral at Versailles. View from the balcony. Second floor, just with David. Yeah, oh my gosh, I just want to travel. That's what I'm in a position to do right now. Book form. Anyways, yeah, maybe I'll take a break. There's so much to do with this book. I can't believe I got myself into this situation yet again. I've overcomplicated everything, and now I can't just do things on one level, right? It has to be like a complex, multi-layered level type of thing, of course, right? So